Yep.
in the mid-2000s. So welcome, Cecil. We look forward to the presentation.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
man.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is, when I was practicing, it's about 2.5 hours. Hopefully everybody's good with that. No, I'm kidding. 45 minutes tops. I'll be good. So my question is, did Trivy identify its own vulnerability? Anybody know? I don't know if it did, but that would be pretty funny, right?
It is funny. It is ironic.
It is ironic, and I just wonder if it like popped up and said, hey, there's an issue with your vulnerability scanner.
It's a tool to report CVEs, yet
Yeah.
it has CVEs
Yeah.
against
So how does that work, right? I don't know. Yeah, I was going to say, we want to switch over to my slides. Okay. So I am going to run through a bunch of examples of tools that I have found to help with testing of infrastructure as code. When these guys asked me if I would do a talk, I was like, well, what will I talk about? And then I was like, I've been doing some research on testing infrastructure. I said, I guess I can share what I've learned. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm not an expert on most of these tools, but I have recently been looking at them, and I think some of them seem pretty useful. And so I thought I would share that. So keep that in mind as you're going through. You guys may have used some of these and may have more experience, and I would love to hear if you have what you think of them, if you're using them or not using them, if there's a reason you weren't, whatever it might be. So feel free to chime in. So on that note, I would like to ask the group, why would we want to test infrastructure as code? Why do you guys think you would want, why were you interested in hearing about this? What's the benefit of doing testing of our infrastructure as code? I'll write our answers up here on the board. So I'm looking for thoughts from you guys. I have my own thoughts, but I'd like to know what you guys are thinking. Yes, sir. Ooh. That might be a little. Okay, so if I summarize that like testing before production kind of a thing. Why would you want to test before production? What's wrong with just going straight into production? Because we've all done it. I can share a quick story. I've been doing this a long time. I managed a team here in Des Moines long enough ago that we were data processing for credit unions, and we had an outage over a weekend. Maybe it was during the week. I don't remember now. But we only had one guy out of 6 that knew how the code worked. He was on vacation. He had to rent a hotel so he could get internet access on dial-up to fix it, because he had to remote into production and fix the R6000 server directly. That's how bad it was. I've done this way too long. So, other thoughts?
Well, do you want to make sure that it's reliable and secure?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what other reliable and secure? And I'm
destroy existing infrastructure by accident?
yeah, you don't want to, right? You don't want to destroy the wrong thing, or you might be destroying existing because it might be what you're replacing, maybe. But you want to have some, you want to destroy the right thing, right?
Yep.
I'll just put the right things. Yeah,
I like that quote. That's
right?
Destroy right things.
Right? So again, I've been doing this a long time. Years ago, I was managing a team, and I had a gal. She was trying to delete data from a table. She had to delete star.star, and she thought she was in test. She was not. So I told her, you probably won't do it again. We didn't fire her. We're like, this is a lesson learned, right? You got to check. You got to make sure. And we had backup, so we only lost half a day or something like that, I think, of actual data. It really wasn't that bad. It's a good learning experience. You got to look at it that way. Other ideas? Other thoughts? I'll come back to you, Joy.
You want to make sure the changes you make are actually the intended change.
Yeah, you want they're making the right changes. Yeah, right? So is it the correct changes? How about that? Is that correct changes? There would be nothing worse than running a script and realizing you ran the wrong script. Just like you run a delete star and you realize you're in the wrong table, in the wrong environment. It's
Safety net, so if you run those tests in CI.
okay. Yeah, so you're giving yourself a safety net. Absolutely. So these are great. I think these are all very valid reasons. Thank you for chiming in. Did you have one more you want me to throw on here, Joy?
Confidence when refactoring.
Refactoring. Who refactors infrastructure? What? Now you're making me get really low here. No. So spelling is proportional to distance from the board. So I know I spelled that wrong. But I've done enough training over the years that I know, and I shortchange refactoring, but that's all right. You guys got the idea. So I'm going to... Maybe this is a really old board that I had at home. That's when you know you're really a training nerd, when you have Post-it notes, the easel's mine, the markers are mine. I was like, I'm prepared. It's not, yeah. Okay, so what am I going to cover today? I want to cover how we handle these things, how we give ourselves ways to ensure we're not destroying the wrong things or that we're making the correct changes and stuff. So I'm going to try this out. This is not something I actually practice too much, but I'm going to do that. It's not great, but does anybody recognize what that might be? It is a triangle. What does the triangle represent?
A shape.
It is a shape, yes. Good call. It's going to be the testing pyramid, right? So I'm going to talk about different parts of the testing pyramid and how it would apply to infrastructure as code, and then how we can handle our concerns up there, which for some of you on the far left, sorry you can't see the list, but I didn't know where else to put it. So I'm going to start with static analysis. That's going to be our first friend. And then I'm going to show you how you can do policy tests. And then we're going to do some integration tests. And then I'm going to show you how you can do test-driven development for infrastructure. And lastly, I will show you a demo of doing behavior-driven development. And if you're not familiar with those two, when we get to it, I'll try to briefly talk about it. But that's kind of where I'm going. So think of this, the static analysis is going to be just like you would on code, on development code base for an application with a linter. Policy testing, this is basically the closest thing we would have to unit testing for infrastructure. So you're checking more than what a linter might check, but you're not actually generally going to create infrastructure when you do that, because if you're trying to do it local, unit testing is usually local, and it's not necessarily quite one-to-one, so this is about the equivalent that we have. And then mostly where we're going to get our bang for our buck, we'll see, is in the integration testing. And then, of course, I'm a big fan, as John mentioned, of TDD. Done it a long time, and I've done BDD a long time. In fact, I'll mention the books when I get to it here. So I've got some samples of some books that I find useful for these topics, and I'll try to point out where and why. So I am going to do a lot of demos during this talk. I need to unlock. There we go. So I will kind of just set the stage for each of these and then run through and show you the tool, show you a working example, and then we'll run through all these things. Like I said, we get to the end, we'll have time to kind of talk about what you guys think. So here we go. This was what I thought, some things of what you guys said are the problems. So one thing nobody mentions, it could be really expensive if your infrastructure fails on you, right? If you remove the wrong thing, somebody said, I don't want to destroy the wrong thing, that could be really expensive. I don't know about you guys, I've done manual testing of infrastructure after I've deployed it, but man, if you get more than 2 or 3 things being created at a time, that's not going to work well. And we've all done this. We've all had something you share with somebody and then it doesn't work for them. That's the worst, right? But it happens. And then, given that we've been doing this for application software forever, why wouldn't we do it for infrastructure as code? And the nice thing about it is, what I'm here to show you tonight, is there's a lot of momentum and a lot of tooling being built in this arena. So it's easy to do nowadays. It's not hard. So that helps. So again, these are the things that I said I was going to cover, and I'm going to do a bunch of live demos. So I'm going to jump in with the first example. So this is a tool called CFN Lint. So I'm going to do, I should just clarify, all my demos are going to be on, I'm going to start off on CloudFormation, which is the Amazon Web Services templating language. And then I'm going to go to Terraform, which is a platform agnostic one. But what got me into this is I've done a ton of CloudFormation work, but it's generally been on smaller code bases and smaller setups of infrastructure that we basically tested manually because we didn't really have that much, and we probably shouldn't have, but we did. And then I recently joined a team that's switching to Terraform, and I wasn't real familiar with Terraform. And I was like, I'd really like to know what I'm doing, and I'd like to be able to test what I'm doing to see as I'm learning. And that got me into checking out all these tools. So I'll be doing CloudFormation first and then Terraform. I'm sure there are things for Azure or GCP, Google, if you're using those, but conceptually the concepts are all going to apply, right? It's just made to be a different tool. So CFN Lint is a linter for CloudFormation templates. So basically you need to install it. I've got all these things set up. I didn't want to waste time installing things and showing you. So at the end, I'll give you a slide. It's got a link to the repo where I have all this. So you can get all this later and you can try it out yourself if you want. All these sample files will be there, and you'll be able to see all the tools I used. So CFN Lint is a Python tool. You basically point it to a template, a CloudFormation file, and you get some output. So let's demo it. So this is what it looks like. This is the bad template file that I'm processing. No, that is not you, that's me. There we go. Sorry, I scrolled a little too much there. But basically, it's trying to create an S3 bucket, which is like a folder on Amazon infrastructure, and it's got a couple of properties. And what's nice about the linting tools is if you've done any of this for a while, these YAML files get really big. And the question is like, what properties does a bucket have? What can I do? And then even if you know the properties, then what are the valid values? Have I used one or not? Because you may or may not have IntelliSense, or if you're using AI, maybe that'll help you do it. But in a lot of cases, it's like if you're kind of guessing, you may not do so well. So these tools are really good at helping you figure that out, whether you've done something good or not. So let's give it a shot here. I'm going to do, oops, if I can spell real quick. I've got a script that I'm going to run. Oh, I'm not, sorry. Thought I'd already done that.
It's okay, we know it worked on your machine.
It did, it worked fine. Oh, all right. So here's our first demo. We're going to run CFN Lint against this bad template. And you'll see here when you run CFN Lint against the bad template, you get some decent output. It gives you kind of an error message or a number assigned to that rule or whatever it's checking. And then it kind of gives you a description and what line number failed. I believe this tool has got predefined checks that it's making. So it's kind of out of the box. You just run it. This is what you get. Now, if you run it on a good template, so I also have a good one, which is the same template. Show you real quick what that one looks like. It's the same S3 bucket with a bunch more properties. So that's how many more lines it takes just to define a good S3 bucket on Amazon. 67, almost, there's some, obviously I've got some stuff at the top, some comments, but 60 lines just to define an S3 bucket correctly. Who wants to check that by hand? Not me. So if I run it on a good one, you basically, no news is good news. You don't get anything back. So if you're running this on a CI/CD pipeline, that might be what you like, is the fact that it doesn't return anything. That's not the case with all the tools I tried out, so you'll see it's downhill from here, depending on your preference. All right, going back to slides. That's the first demo. It's pretty simple. Grab CloudFormation lint and run it against a template. It's pretty simple. So what else do we have? I found a tool called Checkov. So Checkov does the linting, but it also has some security checking. So it's checking more than just were you missing anything and did you give a valid value. This is going to have some opinions on did you configure it in a good way based on what they think good is, right? So take that for what it's worth. But if you run it, you're going to pass it the bad template. So I'm using the same files over and over for the evaluation by the tools, just so you can compare. So if I go over to the demo for this one, so it's the same good and bad pair. So demo 2, I'm going to run. So with Checkov, you give it a -F for the file name, and then you also have to tell it I'm running it against CloudFormation. So this one I think Checkov will work with like Terraform as well, but I found it for CloudFormation, so that's what I'm demoing it on. I presume you would get the same output if it was Terraform. So when you run this, you can see already, you get a lot more verbose output. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. That's in the eyes of the beholder, right? But you're going to get a bunch of output. And it will tell you, even if you're passing, it tells you, hey, I checked this rule and you passed. But then down here it says it failed because I don't have server-side encryption enabled. And it thinks I should have that. And it also thinks I should have logging enabled, and I don't have that enabled. So it's giving me some, and then it's telling me a little bit about the rules it's applying. And then I like the fact that it has a online reference to documentation saying this is the best practice that we're suggesting why this rule failed. So if you weren't sure that, why would I need to do that? Like why do I need to block public access control to my bucket? Well, maybe I'll go read on that, right? So that's kind of nice. I thought that was pretty good. On the other hand, it's a lot of output. And you could always, just hit enter. You could obviously just redirect it in your pipeline to an output. Let's say you're running that. Okay, where am I here? Scroll this up? I guess not. That's all the way down. So all the way down here, I'm going to run it on the good template. I should have put a return to top there. I thought I did. Sorry. But basically, we're just going to run it on the good template. And now what you'll see here is I still get a bunch of verbose output, but they're all passing. So I get, for all these rules that were checked, it tells you. So in some ways, if you're like, I want to make sure, I want to know it ran this check, here's your validation, right? So if you're going to have somebody audit you, you could save this off and say, every time we run a build, our pipeline runs, we save off this documentation and we can show that we passed everything. And then there's one rule down here. It actually said that it skipped checking the logging, whether or not the logging is enabled, because apparently it's in my good template, it's configured as a logging bucket. And so why would you log a logging bucket? If the bucket's for logging, right? And then okay. So if you agree with that, then you could say this is actually better than the last tool's output, because the last tool said you should have had logging enabled. Well, this one's saying no, actually, based on the configuration of the S3 bucket, I wouldn't turn that on. So I kind of like that. So that's check off. What else we got? Still static, right, at this point. So there's one called CloudFormation Guard. So CFN Guard is actually written by the AWS team. So it's probably changing a lot. But they have their own, one of the things I like about these is they have their own set of rules. And you can use them, but you can add to it. So you can have your own organization level rules that you can ask it to run as well. So it gives you a set of guidelines on how to write rules. And there's something called a guard file, this rules.guard, and you just point the tool at your rules file and it'll do it. So has anybody here done SonarQube? Familiar with SonarQube, anybody? We've got quite a few hands. So SonarQube is a linter generally for application code. I've never run it on infrastructure code, but I suppose you could. But they probably have rules. So SonarQube has been around a long time. Their rule base is somewhere in the neighborhood of, last time I worked with it for a client, it was like 4,000 rules out of the box. And then they wanted us to tweak the rule set for them. We're like, sure, you want to pay us to do that? Okay. So we did. And then the problem was their code base was a mess. So basically we ended up turning off like 80% of the rules, which defeats the purpose, right? But you got to start somewhere. So that's what we did. But anyway, this reminds me of that. So now CloudFormation Guard, it's AWS, so you get it from, in this case on a Mac, I got it through Brew. All these tools you can find them on your favorite package manager for sure. And so, this is what the rules look like. So you can say S3 public access is blocked when, and then I don't know. I didn't really dig into their formatting of their rules that much. I don't know if it's the easiest to follow, but the thing I liked about it is that you could create your own, you can have your own organizational rules to replace maybe rules they have. So if we run this guy, again, I'm going to run it on the same, so I've got that guard file here. I'm going to run it on the same set of files. So at least this one's at the top. I'm going to run on the bad one first. So notice this one's way faster. That was one thing I noticed. It seemed to process much faster. So it failed these two rules that I don't have public access blocked, and I haven't established ownership controls. I don't remember the other one saying that. So there's a new one. And then this one's a little more detailed in what they are outputting for information. But there's a reason here, but there's not like a link to anything. So I still kind of like the one that had the link. And then if you run this one on the good template, it's another one where no output. So silence is golden, maybe. You can't really see it down here, but there's nothing there. Oh, thanks. I'm probably the only presenter that uses 99% of the screen to do stuff. Okay, so that's static policy or static analysis, and then a little bit of policy. Here's the output. I showed that already. If you run on the good one, it does actually. That one came out with nothing, right? This says it showed pass. What did we get? Now I'm questioning what we got for output. We didn't get anything. So, probably didn't get my slide updated. Sorry about that. Okay, next one for static analysis and policy checking is called TaskCat. So TaskCat is another CloudFormation tool, and good or bad, it uses a configuration file to run. So you don't pass TaskCat the file you want to process. You have it. I think the intent is you put a configuration file in your repo with the code, and then you run the tool against it. And you can have it run multiple regions, and we'll get into this in a second, why that's important. And then here's where you give it the name of the template. Which one do you want it to test against? So you can do testcat lint, which will do the static analysis. So I'm going to do that first. I got to get in the right place to do it. So this one looks a lot like Chekhov, and I have a feeling that this guy could be using Chekhov under the hood. Not that anybody would do that, but you know, tools have been known to use other tools, right? So, but they prettied it up a little bit, I guess. They give you some errors and some warnings, some output there. So, you know, but if it's running on a, you know, now these you could run locally. I would argue you should run these locally, maybe. Not maybe, I think you should. So I think seeing color-coded output's not bad, and seeing the verbosity is not bad. The problem is if this is a lot of errors because it's a lot of infrastructure, it could get a little overwhelming. So that's something to think about. Okay, so now I have to, notice you guys probably can't see it, but I wrote myself little notes. So this one I got to edit the taskcat config file, because in order to run it on a different file, you have to edit the config file. But I wanted to show you guys that. So here, I'm going to go here and switch from the bad one to the good one, and then go back here and say run the linting on the good one, and it basically says, I don't know how well you can see it down here, it says linting passed for the file, and it gives you the file name. And it's white info instead of error or yellow warnings or red errors. So a little bit of indication that yes, I did run and you did get something back that's confirming it's good. So a little bit different with this guy again. So they all have variations in how they output things. So, you know, you may have preferences of one over the other. Now, what is interesting about TaskCat is it also does integration testing. So while I've been doing the static analysis, we kind of, some of these, when we start getting the ones that have the rules and you could change the rules, they were doing more policy testing because they have a lot of built-in rules around the security. So like the one where the rules showed up about not having ownership and the other ones didn't show that, that's the situation where you've got something applying more policy than just linting. And so this one also says at least one ownership control should be configured, and it's not. So TaskCat also is checking policy. Okay, so TaskCat also allows you to do integration testing. So one thing about this tool is you can do both. And it turns out that when I go to run the integration test and show you that, it will actually run the lint first. So I had to give it a good template file, or I can never get to show you the test. So because they always run the linting first. Now maybe there's an option to turn that off. I didn't look at it that closely, to be honest. So, and the other thing, the reason I have a note to myself to start Docker, which I did not check, but I hope I have it running. I think I had it running, is that TaskCat uses a Docker image to do its thing. So you need to have Docker for it. So assuming I have that, okay, one other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you here. I have a personal AWS account open, and I'm on the CloudFormation console. So if you're not familiar with Amazon Web Services, they have a million web apps for all their different things they provide. One of them is called CloudFormation, which is basically how do you create their infrastructure. And they have this idea of stacks. So stacks is just a group. So if you're an Azure person on Microsoft side, it's like a resource group. I think it's very similar. Except, in my experience with Microsoft, you can't delete a resource group and have it delete all the resources. You got to delete the resources first and then go delete the group, I think. That's what I remember. Whereas here, the nice thing about stacks and Amazon is if a stack groups everything together, so if you just delete the stack, it all goes. You don't have to keep track of all these little things that are all over the place that got created. I mean, I've had resource lists that have been hundreds, and I don't want to try to verify they're all gone. But if I just hit go stack and hit delete stack. Now you want to make sure you delete the right stack. But of course, they have protection mechanisms that you can turn on to say, don't allow somebody to delete this on accident without a whole bunch of idiot checks, that kind of thing. So I'm going to come in here. The point I'm going to come in here is because the integration tests are going to verify from a linting standpoint the template's good. They're going to deploy the template on the fly real to my account. It's going to validate that the resources created match what the template said to create. And then it's going to clean up after itself and delete everything. So it takes a little bit to run, which is nice because that gives me time to switch over here and show you that it's doing it, and then show you that it's gone at the end. So this is where you don't want to be destroying the wrong things. Make sure you're destroying the right things. But that's what I like about the stacks, is it groups the things together. And when I get to Terraform, Terraform doesn't use stacks, but because it's scripted, the idea is that it keeps track of everything for you. I think I'm biased a little bit, having used CloudFormation so much that and I've used stacks to help myself. But anyway, so I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to switch to we're on demo 5. I have 11 demos total. So I have to pass it my profile, and then, so I've configured AWS locally, and then with credentials. And then you do taskcat test run is the command, pretty easy. And looks like I have Docker running because it wouldn't have got this far. So now it says it's creating. And you remember in that configuration file, it said US East 1 and US West 2. So it's actually going to create resources in both regions. So in Amazon's world, a region is like different data centers in different parts of the US or the world, if you so choose. So if we come over here, there it is. And notice it already says create complete. It already created it, but Taskcat doesn't know that. There's a lag, and I'm sure it's querying AWS APIs, and for whatever reason, probably because it did US East 1 and now it's doing US West 2, and I'm just in US East 1 up here. But if you were looking in the stack, you come over here to resources, it'll show you everything it created. In my case, the only thing it created is one S3 bucket. So it's not a long list, but like I said, I've had a really long list before. The other nice thing about the stacks is you get these events, which now it's already gone. Sorry. So it already deleted it, but if I went back here, it's gone already. So delete's in progress, so now it's deleting the other one, but it's cleaning up after itself. So this is really handy. The trick is you got to run this on a non-production environment. Please, 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 please. Don't go back to work tomorrow and run this and destroy something and blame it on me. So you have to make sure you have an environment set up to run this that is a separate account always. Whether that's a sandbox account, QA account, dev account, I don't care, whatever you want to call it. It's still going. It still thinks it's deleting. So it's a little slow. But I like the fact that, you could see it over here, and we could go to US West 2, and there won't be anything here now, I don't think, which there isn't. And do you guys think that looks, well, A, it looks blurry, but also looks smaller, right? So it's crazy to me that Amazon, so I zoomed in on Chrome, on the other, it's the same tab. All I did was switch, but they're tracking it somehow on the, shouldn't be. I don't know, maybe it is across top. Does Chrome treat those different?
I would wonder if it's a subdomain.
Oh, okay, so now it says delete complete, and basically, if I don't get anything that says the test failed, it means it passed. So that's something I don't like, that it didn't give me an actual test pass. But again, it's another no news is good news. But for me to demo this, I needed to give it a usable template that I knew would work, because I wanted to have it run all the way through the process so you could see it in action. Okay, going to keep moving here. I got more to show. All right, so this was the Taskcat. So you get these create complete and deleted successfully, and that's all you really get. It does, I do remember now, it does generate a folder called Taskcat outputs with some HTML, so it does document what it did. I didn't actually look at this, but I'm presuming that's good documentation for your pipeline run, so that might be helpful. Okay, I want to switch to Terraform. I want to keep moving. So on Terraform, the nice thing is that because it's cross-platform, there's a little more support for it, and there are, again, multiple layers, which there are CloudFormation now, but it's got good community support, and some of the stuff we're going to do is built right into Terraform, which makes it nice. So for example, if you want to do static analysis on Terraform templates, there's a command called Terraform validate, and it will validate your template for you. So if I have basically trying to do an S3 bucket that's not very well defined again, but now it's a different file because it's not a CloudFormation, it's a Terraform, because we couldn't have a standard YAML across everybody. That would be too easy. So I mean, Terraform is the intent of that, I guess, right? Because it will then convert it to whatever it needs to for the right platform. So I have to tell it that I'm doing it, which is not in here, but there's a configuration that says I'm doing it on AWS, and so I will run validate. Then there's also a format command, so you can have it check the format, which really is helpful if you've done any YAML, right? It's all indenting and the dashes and the things lined up. So you want to make sure that's correct. Before you can actually run a deployment, you have to initialize, or no, you can do a linting, but you got to initialize. And then there's also a security command. Sorry, actually tflint and tfsecurity are two other tools. They're not part of Terraform, my bad. When we get around to doing the testing, we have to initialize. Okay, so you'll see some output like this from these other tools, but let me do demo 6 here. So demo 6, this is our Terraform file. So, here you can see required provider, AWS, what region do I want to deploy to, and then what am I deploying. And so if I go to my demo 6 folder and try to run, I do have to initialize and then run validate. You get back success. The config is valid. Awesome, thank you. Then we could run format and check that. Comes back with nothing, which means I guess the format is good. So we have good formatting. And then now I'm going to run tflint, which is another tool. It's not part of Terraform. But tflint, you have to initialize it, and then you can run it for some reason. It's a 2-step. So if I do that, pretty quick output, and I get one problem. It doesn't like the bucket name we gave it. And basically it's saying, we want typing, and you didn't give us a type. So that's kind of nice. I'm a guy that likes typing. I don't like JavaScript, sorry, for those that do. Now if we do the tfsec, this is going to do more of the policy checking. So tflint is more just the static analysis, but tfsec will do policy checking like we were doing with the earlier tools. Notice now we get different style of output, but we're going to see similar things. So the things on an S3 bucket that it should check. Oh, by the way, tfsec is being acquired by Trivy. And we will note that Trivy was just compromised. So maybe don't use tfsec when you go home, when you go back to your work tomorrow. It would have been hilarious if it would have said, hi, Trivy has been compromised, but it does not. That would have been great. That would have been so good. But yeah, here the bucket's got a bad name. Okay, but you don't have any blocking of public ACLs. You're not doing any blocking of public policies. You don't have encryption enabled. You're not ignoring public ACLs, or you are ignoring. See, I don't like some of this wording. No public access to block, so not ignoring public ACLs. Like, who wrote that? Man, okay. Not restricting public buckets, not not using a customer managed key to do the encryption, so on and so on. This is pretty good output. And you get links again. That's the other nice thing about it. Links to why is this something you should care about. I think whenever the tools do that, that's very helpful. And what I like about this is kind of like some of the CVE tools. You're going to get how many things did it process, and how many rules passed, how many were critical, how many were high, medium, low. So you might be able to say, we're going to set a policy our pipeline won't fail if it's anything a medium or lower, we won't worry about it. But if it's critical or high, maybe we do, or maybe only critical. But you get to make that choice because the tool gives you that flexibility. I like that. It's not just all or nothing, you either passed or it didn't. So there's some benefits to some of these tools like that. Okay, another policy tool that I found. Got to get back to the next demo. There's one called Open Policy Agent, OPA. So the thing I like about this is it's an open source tool, but I think it's like, so it's not Terraform selling you something or forcing you to use it. It also has a bunch of its own pre-configured rules, and then you can add your own rules to it as well. So just like CFN Guard, this one you can change and add organization rules to it. This one had a lot of rules as well. And sorry, I didn't mean to grab the mic if that gave an echo back there. But so we'll run it. There's a rules file just like the other tool had that you need to set up. And when you run that, you'll get some output. Again, it tells you whether it likes it or not. So we'll demo that one. Again, running, this is demo 7. So the only difference is I got the rule file here. But I'm going to run it on the same bucket that this S3 bucket that's in demo 5. So again, it's in the repo that I'll share with you at the end. So here's the output when I ran this guy. So it says it's going to, the Terraform plan is going to do these things if you use this script. And then, yeah, there's nothing here. It's pretty limited. Oh wait, that generated the plan. I forgot. There's multiple steps to this one. This is the one I didn't like. So sorry. I ran TF plan is all I ran up here. Is why this output looked odd to me. Because in order to run OPA, it only runs against your Terraform plan output. So you have to run plan, which generates a plan. Then you have to run show for that plan that you just generated and generate it to a JSON file, because the internal format of Terraform is not a JSON. Then you run OPA against that file. And so I'm way down here. I'm so sorry. I thought this would jump to the top. So it's OPA eval, pass the directory to the rules file. What plan am I evaluating? And I think data terraform.deny is like the rule set, if I remember right. So then I get this output. So notice that was like, boom, really fast, because it's local, which is, I guess, kind of nice about Terraform having the plan local, is like, hey, you don't have encryption enabled and you should have versioning enabled. I think maybe one of the other tools said something about versioning, but not all of them have. So, but then this one doesn't say anything about ownership. So again, mileage is varying depending on which tool and which rules they're using, right? So that's good and bad, I think, that there's not a standard set of rules. And maybe there is, and I'm just not aware. This was a couple of weekends of research on my part. So again, I'm not an expert on this, just found these tools to be something that I would investigate further and want to use potentially. Okay, so that's OPA. So that's policy testing for Terraform. So now let's get to, this is really interesting, Terraform integration testing. There's a tool called TerraTest, which is actually written in Go. And so I don't know if Terraform is in Go itself, but TerraTest is. And so it will do the same thing as TaskCat, where it's going to deploy, verify, and then destroy. It's going to automatically clean up everything. The only difference, like I said, is because I'm deploying to Amazon, I thought I would see a CloudFormation stack get created, and I didn't. So it doesn't do that, but it tracks everything it's creating and then cleans up automatically. So you got to trust the tool, I think, but I would assume that, it's going to do that. And then this is really nice, especially if you got a lot of infrastructure being built and you have multiple tests, it can run them in parallel. So that could be really helpful. Okay, so for this guy, for demo 8, what the heck does that thing look like? So actually, I think I have a slide for it. So this is your test structure. So much like I would in other languages, I write a test function. I have to give some options about the Terraform. So I have to give it my profile. You put your profile in there. And then there's a defer, which says basically this is like a tear down in most testing tools, I think. It's going to do that at the end. It's going to destroy whatever was created. So here it's going to do an init and apply. So it's going to basically do the plan and then apply so this is the thing that goes out and actually deploys it. Then it's going to read it. It's going to go get it, and then it's going to check something on it. In this case, it's going to assert that that bucket exists, and it's in US East 1. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, so when I run it, we'll see all these steps happen in the background. Notice it takes a little bit. It takes about a minute, it looks like. So we want to run that. But again, I have all this code for you to look at, so you don't have to try to copy this down, obviously. But there is some setup in here, and then there's some checks. I've got a test for. So I have multiple tests besides what I showed up there. There's a test for, does the bucket have encryption? I have a test for, did the bucket get created? I have a test for, does it have versioning? So I've tried to apply good testing practice to this and have separate test functions for different things that I want to validate instead of all in one. So we'll give that a shot here. We'll run this TerraTest on that Terraform template that will generate the S3 bucket. And you can see here, it's very verbose, very verbose. And I'm sure that this can be turned off. I left it on because I wanted you guys to see how verbose it was. So actually that ran, 12 and a half seconds, so it wasn't a minute. But what I like about this is it does tell you, hey, your test passed. Whatever test it ran, it passed. I don't know if you can see I highlighted this. You can't really see it. But it says pass, OK, and it's the name of the test. And if you see in here, I'm going to scroll back through. What you'll be able to see if I get back to the top, all this output, like so much output, right? So here it initialized successfully, initialize, and then now it's going to test. And if we scroll, I know it feels like I'm scrolling fast. I will get to the part I want to call out here. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can dial this down, right? But what I wanted to show somewhere, now I'm not even, when I'm trying to find it right, I can't. I don't think I've gotten to the actual test yet. That's why I'm not seeing them yet. No, this is destroy. Usually after each one of those 3 tests, there's a test pass somewhere in here. And then there's a thing at the end that shows that they all passed. That's what I was trying to find. I guess, so here's the line for the last one. The last test has versioning, but there's also a line like that for the other 2 tests. And then you get an overall.
You mean the ones where you love it?
Yeah, this line here.
Yeah.
Is for that specific test, and then this is for the overall that all 3 passed. So that's what I was trying to get at. Okay. Keep moving here. So, well, I've been doing simple deploys of just like one S3 bucket. So now I'm going to do a deploy of a virtual private network that has 2 subnets under it. So it's going to create multiple resources, and then we'll go look at them in my S3 account, or sorry, in my AWS account, not my S3 account. So that's the only difference between this demo and the one I've already done, is it's going to do multiple resources, just so you can see that. So hit this guy, and when it gets done, I'll show you, or actually maybe while it's running. But so if I come over here to US1 and go, instead of CloudFormation, I want to go to VPC. And you can see now I have 2 test VPCs. And then I should have I have some subnets in here, which these got created, I don't know, test 0, test 1, test 2, something. You can see I ran this a bunch of times. But interestingly, I don't think any of those should be there because they should have cleaned up, right? That's where I'm like, not 100% sold on this one yet. It claims it's cleaning up, but so that took 22 seconds. So there was a test for VPC with subnets. There's a test for has DNS support. So if I show you demo 9, I've got test that has DNS, which is literally just going out and checking, does this string exist, and is it true? Is it set to true? Not complicated, but does this subnet have 10.0.0.0.16? That kind of stuff. Which, if you fat finger something like that, might be really handy to have this catch it. So, could be useful, maybe not. Just making you aware, right? So that's how you can use an example of TerraTest with multiple resources. Okay, so how might you TDD this? Well, just like you would TDD anything else. You start out by writing the test. That's where TerraTest comes in nice. You could write a failing test for all the resources that you want to have exist, run the test, and it'll say, yeah, there isn't anything. And because you wouldn't have, and this is where it gets tricky, you need to have enough of a template file for it to run, but not enough to have it create stuff. So I think your mileage is going to vary on this. I'm not sure how great you're going to be able to do this, but you could do it. And part of the reason I bring it up is I brought these books here. So this book, this Infrastructure as Code book, this one was just written in 2025. It's very recent. It's got a whole very large chapter on testing infrastructure as code. I think it's really good. And then my favorite that's been around forever, this is from like 2009. This is how long ago I've been doing this. Test-driven infrastructure, and it dates itself just by the fact that it's referencing Chef. Who here remembers Chef and Puppet? Those were the days, right? There's a couple of us old enough, yeah. But this book talked about doing TDD, and then also how to do, this book even talked about doing behavior-driven development with infrastructure, which was pretty cool. And I did some presentations off of that back in the day. And when I get to the behavior-driven development stuff, I'll talk about the other 2 books. But there are people that have done it, talk about doing it. So I'm going to show you an example. So I have a test that I wrote because I want to type in front of you, but it is going to fail by default, and then we'll make it pass, so you can at least kind of see how it might work. So I have this test here on demo 10, this test. So I have this S3 bucket test, and if I was I don't think it's going to work because I don't think I have my Amazon configured for it. I'd run it in Golang, but the IDE here, but I don't think I do. So I got to stick to my demo, do it from the command line. So we're going to run it, and it will fail. So now you get a chance to see what it looks like when a test fails. At least it better fail. So I get a failure. You may notice the fail inside the giant verbosity that we got back. So it turns out if you scroll and scroll and scroll, right here, boom, expected enabled but was blank. So there was a property missing. What am I testing here? I'm testing versioning. So versioning was not enabled. So it failed. So I'm going to go back to this. So the test doesn't need to change because the test caught the problem. So I need to go fix the actual Terraform file. So I've got this guy here. This is so for this test, only for the TDD test, I used a different Terraform file. It's a little more complete because I wanted to be able to have it, but I wanted it to be able to fail with something. And then I have this cheat file here, this fix.temp. And if I copy this and go back here and paste it at the bottom, what I'm doing here, you'll see, I'll use my, is it going to, oh, this button, my fancy, oh, hold on. What did I just do? Cursor, I hit a cursor with the, so this pointer can do the cursor, and I didn't mean to. But basically, if I use the right button, I haven't spoken in a while, we're setting up this versioning for this bucket ID and status is enabled. All that, you'll notice defining infrastructure as code is not, it's not it's very, it takes a lot of string, right? A lot of output just to do that. But now, if I go back magically to the demo, whoops, showed the man behind the curtain. Enter, run this guy. How am I doing on time? Sorry. I'm running a little long, sorry. We'll get the test to pass. And it passes. So there, I just TDD'd it in a way, right? So maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. All right, so last thing, behavior-driven development. If you're not familiar with this, the idea is that you want to describe your tests in English that a human can understand and read. And maybe nowadays, an AI bot. Think about that in a minute. But we use a language called Gherkin. Gherkin is a specification tool that is industry standard. So it's one of the nice things that come out in our world where everybody uses Gherkin. Doesn't matter what language. Python, Java, C#, they all exist. Everybody uses Gherkin. But the implementation is different. So in Go, it's called GoDog. And then it runs with TerraTest because the BDD frameworks are just for parsing the Gherkin files, and then you have to run them with the test runner. So kind of like the old Mocha Jasmine days, if anybody remembers testing JavaScript that way. Kind of like that. And the benefit behind it is your tests become living documentation. Like your tests are in English, they explain what the system needs to do. Your users, your whoever, everybody on the team can understand it. And if you need to change it, you go change those explanations and then you fix your code and everything's good. That's what in the early days, the specification by example book is from 2009. That was the early days of this idea. And then later on, somebody else wrote the BDD in Action book. And I think there's a second edition of the BDD book. I'm pretty proud of the specification by example book. Half of the book is on how to do it. And again, back then it was limited on how you could do it. Gherkin didn't exist yet. And half of the book is case studies, and I was on a team that's a case study in there. And we were using a tool called Finesse. Finesse was written in HTML. It was really old. I want to say Ward Cunningham created it, but I don't remember for sure. I'll name drop the wrong name. But so what does it look like if you've never seen it? A Gherkin file will look like this. You have a feature, so you would write up just like you would if you have more like most of us would probably call them a story, but I need something to happen. This is what I want to happen. So this is the what, and then how's that going to happen? Well, given is going to be, so if you know anything about testing, it's basically arrange, act, assert. There's always 3 steps. So arrange in Gherkin is given, then is your act, given, and then there's usually a when, but in this case we don't have a when, but given, when, then is usually the range act assert. So in this case we went straight to then. So you can skip around, you can do whatever. And you can have multiple givens or thens like this. Actually, these are individual tests because they have different scenarios, but you can have multiple thens in one scenario. And given is like your setup. The background is like your setup. So in this case, I want to initialize a Terraform module. I want the S3 bucket to exist in US East 1. I want the S3 bucket to have that encryption set on it, and it also should have versioning enabled. So if I were to ask you to read the Terraform file and ask your customers to say, yes, that's the infrastructure I want, which your customers aren't. Well, it depends. If you're an infrastructure team, maybe the developers are asking you for infrastructure and they would know what you meant. And you showed them the Terraform file or you showed them this, who'd rather read this? Anybody think this is easier to follow? I think it is. I really like this. I try to use this as much as possible. Now the trick is, and then this is the version with the virtual, where you had the multiple subnets. So, you can get as detailed as you want in these descriptions. These are just sentences that you write. They have to make sense. So here you can see the CIDR block should be, and notice this value's in quotes because you can pass parameters. So you can have, and you can have tables. You can have a table in here with rows of data that you want to be passed in and do testing. So you can do parameterized testing if you want. And how that would look like on TerraTest is you have to connect it up with the GoDog. So that's done here through this context idea. I'm not going to get into the details, but just realize you can do it. You'll have my examples and you can go read up more about it. It's pretty slick. So you got to set that up, and then I'll demo that real quick. Just to go, sorry, I know I'm running long. I'm trying to hurry here. Last demo, and then it's wrap. Quick wrap. So here I'll run it. So there's a file called a .feature, which looks like, has the English in it that I just showed you. And you write that, and then you have to write this in-between file. It's called a step file. I always call it the glue code. It's what you take the English, and that's what then the step file is what says, go verify that your production code is doing whatever this says, and you have to write that. So there's a little bit of work as a developer or team using it, but it's so good for getting shared understanding and having everybody on the same page and being always correct documentation. That's the thing I love about it most. So there you go. You just got a BDD plug in your DevOps meeting. So the point about topic doesn't have to be DevOps specific. There you go, right? So it's still running, it's building everything, and then it's going to verify it and check it. So while it's doing that, we'll come back to it. I'll go back to my slides. So I try to show you guys a lot of these different tools. This is just, you'll have this slide to look at. Actually, all these slides are just one giant HTML file, so you want to play the file and then scroll through it. There's not slide by slide to read. So this is just kind of a list of the things that I was showing you guys. How would I use these things? Well, I would definitely do all the linting, validating while I was working locally. I would probably run the policy stuff and the integration testing in the pipeline. Integration testing, maybe you only do it once before you go to prod. Maybe you don't want to run it all the time if it's a really big set of infrastructure. I don't know. If it's just tweaking things, you probably would, but I don't know. So this is where, you can choose to use it however you would wish. Some pitfalls, you probably don't need to test everything. And the reason is that it can be expensive. If you're spinning up and tearing down resources all the time, depending on how many they are and how big they are, it could be expensive. But don't go without any test because you're kind of playing Russian roulette. And do make sure the stuff cleans up. I'm still not sure about TerraTest on that one. So I want to go back and check my account when I get back tonight. But from a testing standpoint, regardless, definitely do the static analysis. That's cheap and easy. It's going to help save your butt many times. If you're doing integration testing, try to do parallel if you can. Definitely use an independent account. Don't use your production account for this. And then these last three, use good test practices just in general. So what I hope you get out of this is that I would call testing infrastructure as code not optional. You should do it just like you do anything else. Layer your tests. Start with linting. Definitely automate it all. And if you're really ambitious, try some TDD and some BDD. So lastly, let's go see, did it finish? It did, and 4 tests pass running from the Go-Dog Cucumber tool. So there you go. That was a lot. I threw a lot at you very fast. I was going to save time for questions, but of course I went 10 minutes over. Actually, I thought I'd be done 25 minutes ago. I never fails, I talk long. But I didn't have anybody to, I don't know, I just injected extra things. So yeah, the BDD books are good. These other books, these are my copies. I'm not giving them away, but if you're interested in them, take a picture, look them up on Amazon. Highly recommended. You'll notice a theme in the books that I like. They're not very thick. So I like easy to get through books that give me how to do things right away, and I can apply them quickly. So anyway, I thank everybody for coming tonight. I hope this was useful. And if people want to ask questions, feel free. If we want to take, a couple minutes. Jonathan's shaking his head yes. I don't know what time we usually quit. So if you need to run, feel free. If you've got people running around. And I would open the floor to anybody to chime in, because again, I'm curious how many people in here might be using any of these. Is anybody? We got 1. 2? What are you using?
We are mainly using like Terraform format, and the other one that's blanking right now that you mentioned, as well as
So there's validate and format are the 2 Terraform ones. Yeah, that come with it. Yep.
test-driven development on another side of the project.
Okay. Awesome.
CFN link.
CFN, you guys are using?
Well, not on my current project.
But you have used it?
Like auto include that unless there was something similar that was better.
Yeah.
I've seen checkoff and similar like policy tools.
Yeah.
In practice at a client.
Yep. I got to imagine there's quite a few. I mean, certainly on the application side, this is nothing new, right? You've got SNCC and Mend, or maybe they're the same now. Did they buy? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of tools out there for doing that stuff, and they probably nowadays have, I'm sure they have infrastructure stuff. I've mainly, when I've used those tools, used them on the application side. I haven't been on the infrastructure side, but I recently joined a data engineering team that wants to do more Terraform. I was like, well, then let's start doing some testing. So I wanted to research. You had your hand up for you're using some? So Terraform has a native testing library as well now? Okay. I must not have saw that when I was researching. That's good to know. I'm going to look that up. Because it's always nice if it's built in, it's going to be better, right? Generally. Yeah. So let me reframe. It's easier because you're more likely to do it because it's already there. You don't have to install something else. You don't have to get it all set up, right? It's likely going to work out of the box, and that's why I would say better from that perspective for me, right? Yeah. But as you can see, there's so much variation in the output that it really could depend on what tool you pick based on what you find is most useful in the information and what you might be required to document or not document. Because if you're going to do this stuff, somebody ought to be asking you to document it and show that you did it. That would be my thought. But so some of them have much better output than others. Is the fact that it ran and it said nothing, so that must mean it passed? I don't know how many auditors are going to go for that. Some might, but some might not, right? So now I can say, just to share, I worked at a company here in town that did financial work, and we is where I started doing test-driven development 22 years ago. And we did all of our documentation through tests, either through the test that we had that was referenced in that book or through unit testing. And we used index cards and sticky notes. And we passed, I was there 10 years, and we passed the financial audit and SaaS audits every year without a problem. Because when they said, show us your documentation, we went, it's over there running, go look at it. And they went, oh crap, wow, we've never seen that before. What is that? And we're like, that's our documentation, take a look. So it was pretty good. So I think, there are a lot of people who say you got to have other documentation for auditing purposes, and I'm not here to say you're going to get away with it with your auditors or whoever they might be, but we were able to prove ourselves, and it covered us. So any thoughts on any of these? Anybody going to go try any? Yeah? See something interesting here? The thing I liked is they were all easy to try. The barrier was very small. I just needed some template files of one form or the other, and then set them up. The biggest one was TestCAD needing Docker, and then the other, what was the other one that I did need the internet obviously to go to my account to test, but as long as you got a test account, I would say at least on the Amazon side, and I'm sure it's the same, well, I don't know on Microsoft side, to be honest, I shouldn't say, but I don't think you would ever get above the free tier level on Amazon running stuff like this in testing. So I think you'd be fine to experiment.
Link to your repo?
Yes, sorry. I had a slide for that and we missed it. Thank you, John, for bringing that up. I forgot I had one more slide. So QR code, if you hit that, that has the repo on GitHub that's public that has all of these slides in one HTML file, and then all the demos, there's a demos folder that has all the code, and all the commands that I ran are in a presentation demo.sh file. So I found a cool little tool that would allow me to script out all these commands that you saw me, so instead of typing them and fat fingering them. I thought it would help me speed up, and it did not. So, lesson learned there. But
Was that ASCII Cinema?
no, this was called Demo Magic. That's what it was, Demo Magic. Just a bash script. So you just include that bash script in your bash script, and then you have additional things that little commands you can give it, and it'll I think under the hood it's teeing out to the screen and then running it to a console and then capturing the output and sending it back. Something's happening under there, I haven't used bash that significantly in a while, but any other thoughts from anybody? I really appreciate everybody coming. Yeah. For integration testing. That's really a good question because, and I apologize if are you a Source Atlas guy? No, okay, because I don't know everybody because I've just been back recently and there's a lot more than when I was here before. So we just had this discussion internally, 3 weeks ago, and it was interesting because I'm old school test pyramid guy, so I'm going to go to my grave on integration tests are in the middle, and I want to rely on as much as I can on the bottom, and you're over there, so maybe you can't see I will carry I'm a card-carrying member of the test pyramid, so integration's up here. I don't want to do it all the time. It's too expensive. It takes too long. It costs money. But mostly, like on that project that was in the book, we had end-to-end tests, which are way up here. It took like 3 hours. Integration tests were still a while. That's the problem. So I like to have as much. The last company I was at, we actually we use the phrase micro-tests to really, when we're talking about unit tests, what are we talking about? We're talking about really small tests. So we call them micro just to get people to recognize what we meant. But other people arguing that are much younger than me were arguing that there's been this shift in the industry to more of, and they brought it up and showed it to me, and I disagreed with them anyway, but there's this thing called the test trophy now. So the test trophy kind of it's like fat on top, fat on the, no, I don't know. There was a thing where the integration tests were bigger than the rest of it. And the idea was that stuff's got fast enough, resources are fast enough and cheap enough that why not just do it? And I don't know that I can argue with that other than the definition I grew up with, and I'm old, right? So definition I grew up with is it doesn't hit the file system, it doesn't go to the network, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't talk to another object, nothing. It's isolated. That's why microtest is probably a better term. But there's a place for these. How many of these you need and, you know, how much you use them, I think, yeah, I suppose there's, it may, you know, if I was to give the great consultant answer, it depends. Leave it at that, right? So it could be case-by-case specific, but I would say I'm going to default to not having as many of those as other tests if I can. But if I'm limited for there's some constraint that binds me to this, kind of like these infrastructure things, right? There really isn't, other than the policy stuff, there just really isn't a way to unit test. I mean, I guess if you want to call, if you had, you know, if you were going to run your own cloud locally and deploy to that and call that a unit test, but even that to me, I don't know if I'd call that a unit test. But I guess if I differentiate micro testing and unit testing, because I have seen a lot of people that treat unit testing as things that do interact with stuff, so maybe that's where this would be more of a unit test where it's doing things, but it's within our network, our environment's not going out, so maybe that would be okay. I don't know, what do you think? What do you guys follow? Yeah, yeah.
Probably closer to where you're at.
Okay.
I think integration testing is really tricky and it can get really complicated and it can also get really flaky.
Yes.
Even if it is fast,
Yep.
you're still spending half your time.
That's a really good point. If you didn't hear him, he said that the test can be flaky. And by flaky, we mean like one time they pass, first they run 3 times, they pass, and then you run it again, it fails. And then it runs 3 times, and you don't know why it failed. It just randomly seems to fail. And I was on a team once where we had a board that was titled Flaky Tests, and we kept track of them. And we would do the whole chicken scratch next to it, and once, I think our rule was like if it failed 5 times, all right, we're gonna look into it. But it had to be at least 5 times. Because sometimes, you know, if it's once a year, you don't really worry about it. But we had a rule about how much it had to fail before we would put effort into trying to fix it. Because they can be nasty. They can be really hard to figure out. So you got to be careful of that, and I would agree. But, you know, anybody else got a viewpoint on that? Somebody on the other side? It's okay if you are.
I don't want to get started.
Well, I don't have a viewpoint, but I will say that I learned a lot, and your energy and, like, I was really engaged with your presentation.
Thank you.
You got it going on, so
Yeah.
it was really
It doesn't hurt. I was doing corporate training for the last 8 years, so
then there you go.
yeah.
Yeah, you're pulling it out.
I've been. This is a few tricks of mine that I've been at it a while, but that's okay. I like to do it. So yeah, glad everybody got it. Hopefully the people at home got something out of it. If there's anybody on, I don't know, but and then I guess it'll be recorded and up at some point for people to rewatch. Like my whole family, I'm gonna send it out to them.
Bedtime stories.
That's right. That's right. That's what I'm going to do. All right. Well, I really apologize for going over, but I thank everybody for staying. That tells me that it was interesting and you were getting something out of it. So really, really appreciate it. And if you got questions you want to ask me after, if you really want to stay around, I got nowhere to go. So I'll be happy to talk for a bit.
But yeah, thanks, Cecil.
Yep. Thank you.